Hello and welcome everyone to the evolving language, expanding your language to implement your light. Welcome to the evolution of conscious communication, where we are continuously expanding, opening new and vaster cosmic codexes and expanded consciousness, which goes hand in hand with language evolving, because we know how many cycles language has been communicated primarily through what was created, right? Created words and definitions that describe perceptions. And they describe, to some extent, perceptions of physical reality, perhaps, objects, places, identities, emotions, stories, and observable, perceived experiences. And that we know subjective and also being created is, to some extent, what it's been, right? And now, here, consciousness is expanding. And many of us, continuously, many more of us, are finding ourselves experiencing in a vast multitude of ways, right? Ways that vocabulary, words, and even syntax, syllables, definitions created were never designed to do. And nor do they fully express what we're experiencing, right? Because we perceive in subtle fields, subtle energetic fields, shifting through the layers, universally, multidimensionally, spatially, and moment to moment, energetically, right? Sensorially, through all of our body systems, we're experiencing, through all of our sensories, all of our systems, all of our body systems, our architecture. And we're also experiencing through sound, right? Through color and through vibration, through shapes and through waves. And as the continuous evolutions, expansions continue, the cosmic codex of communication is continuing to open the corridors and the hallways and the pathways through our unified field and our unified field to wider arrays, expressing through primordial pure tone frequencies, emanations, through light, mudra movements, holographics, and other ways. And our cosmic relations are already arriving, or recently arrived, with vastly wider cosmic codexes, right? Fully already expressing pure tone source octaves, frequencies for very precise articulation. And we are, each one of us in our own way, We are experiencing these movements and the motion, and of course, the expression of expanded consciousness, weaving new fabrics and realities in every moment through our dialogue, through our emanation, and through our co-creation with it. Consciousness, energy, emanation, fields, sensory, and all the layers in between through the expanding architecture, geometry, and somatics and sound of cosmic unified communication in a multitude of ways through the waves. And this is, of course, unique to each of us and our widening perceptions, our unique codexes, and our widening awareness, right? And we become and are becoming more aware of geometric, holographic intelligence through advanced technology, right? Widening our unified universal perception, communion, communication with nature and elements, with synchronicity and with synergy and forms of communication that occur before thought even ever becomes words. And perhaps even they're no longer required, right? Or less required. Because we're sensing, filtering, and we're processing and integrating with all of our body systems, with all of our body and our skin and our tissues, and even our hair, right? Our antenna and our hair, and our feet and our structures, our energetic and physical structures. And with our energetic architecture, we are communicating through field to field awareness and the unified field, exchanging and interfacing through energetic resonance and alignment. And this evolution could be, and is many times, nonverbal sensing, right? Beyond telepathy, where we're deeply feeling, field to field, feeling, sensed, and inner knowing, that inner knowingness, and even beyond there, within that parallel, is blocks and strings of light intelligence exchanged, right? And received in highly precise levels of exactness. And truly, these experiencing in this way, communication is not new, right? We are remembering this as natural and organic. And our capacity to consciously perceive and co-weave with this expanded communication codex is also expanding with our awareness and consciousness, right? As our sensations, our field-to-field awareness, all of our experiences, our perceptions of these experiences are expanding. And so too is our conscious perception and co-weaving. And therefore, language is beginning, we could say beginning is beyond beginning, evolving, because consciousness itself is in emergence and it's widening. And so rather than inventing and articulation and complicated terminology, trying to overly scientifically-fy, making that up on purpose, to create an articulated, complicated terminology. Instead of doing all that, we begin allowing language and our primordial pure tone frequency to express, right? To express how intuitively and soul known it is for us to do so. To be more precise and more spacious and more resonant in total resonance, and capable of holding and exchanging expanded rates and states of awareness. Language, in all of its forms, becomes an instrument of light and sound technology that organize consciousness along with the expression that's utilized, right? So that means the multitude of ways, meaning vibration, emanation, field to field expression, fields of information created and directed within the field and the structures, right? So that means any field that you would be creating within your field is expressing, emanating, vibrating, field to field expression is part of the communication, whether it's known consciously by the other. There is a dialogue, right? There's an exchange. And with that, that directed field and structure could be also a collaboration of other communication. Mudra hand movements, right? Specifically tuned words that are imbued with frequencies and sacred tones tuned with specific frequency meaning, light language, sounds, sound and a vowel, right? Tone, an actual tone. Telepathic blocks, information. Blocks of information. Strings could be tendrils of information. Lines and lines of information, very detailed. Holographically. And or, we know, a blend of any or all of these through the exchange, right? And there exists through this and within this and beyond that our original language, right? And our original language precedes spoken words. It precedes, meaning before, created language. And it's before lifetime, education, identity, incarnation, because it's the seed, primordial source, essence, your soul frequency. And it's not learned, it's remembered. It's, we could say, spontaneously activated, remembered. It's felt through other emanation and known, embodied. And it's the language through innate language through which consciousness first, primordially, organizes itself into form, right? Because long before humanity developed spoken dialects, consciousness communicated through pattern, right? Geometry, vibration, movement, relationship, harmony, color, tone, light, and harmonic interface and exchange. Even the stars, constellations, systems, frequency fields in the cosmos, galaxies, organize themselves through primordial frequency and language, through geometry, and the elements and the elementals respond through and to this language, right? Every flower unfurls evolves according to its own silent and primordial vibrational seed, encoded cosmic instructions. And rivers also know how to carve valleys and ripple endlessly without being taught. The body itself develops from a single living pure tone primordial cell through an extraordinary innate divine intelligence that requires no verbal instruction. This is the cosmic codex. Primordial source light. Primordial source light, which is a living field of source intelligence that organizes information, energy, and light, that permeates and integrates cosmic creation. And each of us carries this cosmic codex within us and our living libraries. Every soul carries a unique lexicon, a collaboration of vast keys and codes. And just as a flower unfolds differently in its divine unique expression, while emanating the same source sunlight, every soul communicates pure source essence through its own harmonic, unique vocabulary, syntax, frequency, dialect, and codex of an intricate array of keys and codes through your harmonic divine blueprint. And some naturally communicate through sound, through vibration, right? And others through movement, filaments, and flow. And yet others through geometry, sematics, or high frequency velocity. And some through vision and visionary expression, imbued words, poetry, art as activation and frequency expression. And others, of course, and all of us are through presence, through emanation, and through vibration. And the Cosmic Codex is not asking us to speak the same language. It's inviting us to remember and to integrate our own unique primordial tone so that universally we're communicating as consciousness expands and as our dialects and soul to soul communication awaken to communicate heart to heart, field to field, what's known, exchanged, received, and integrated. And every expansion of awareness asks us to expand our energetic and otherwise vocabulary and source expression, right? And what's happening is that consciousness evolving and expanding is bringing forth emergence, which is emergence of our vocabulary and emergence of a vaster octave of communication through telepathy, beyond what's known as telepathy, through sensation. And we require this precise, we could say, precise awakened language expression, right? We require this in the emergence, emergence, emergence. See what I mean? Because our primordial frequency is capable beyond made up words. It's capable of describing with great level of specificity, emanation, and interfacing exchange. We could say multi-species, right? Universally, cosmically, collectively through the unified field. Why is that important? What's happening right now? So to express, and we could say interface, exchange, to express is subtle awareness, right? Field perception, field to field, widened perception, interfacing with fields of energy, information, vast fields of information and energy, sensing, feeling, processing that, and resonance and alignment with a high level of specificity, which also requires what? Spatial intelligence, which is expanding our spatial intelligence, right? And how are we doing that? In many ways, much of the time, whether we know it or not consciously, is that's through living cosmic geometries, right? Seeing the subtleties, even in the ethers of geometries, cosmo, information, or dream time, dream space, geometries, highly technologically advanced information through geometry, through light, through sun and solar codes. And through that, we are naturally, harmoniously embodying our source knowing, right? As we awaken our primordial source seed frequency, we could say, we're embodying our source knowing, our pure tone expression. And what happens from that within there is harmonic organization through thought, right? Thought is organized, harmonized. And so too becomes further communion with others, connection, deeper connections, and a feeling and a sense knowing of inter and inner connection, deeper expansion, energetic expansion. And none of this is new, right? These aren't new modes of communication, even though we're saying the new codex. It's new for now, in this evolution, newly integrated. And so in this infinite potentiality, what that's asking for is new and precise levels of articulation, right? Where we see the codex, the codex is open, right? It's reading, it's breathing, it's reading, it's expressing, it's emanating, it's writing, and it's rewriting through expanded experiences, through expanded awareness. And beyond and within there, every authentic word, light, expression, and vibration you discover, recover, share, and emanate becomes basically another page read and spoken, speaking, integrating, and into expansion. And so every embodied realization and opening becomes another paragraph, right? Your awareness continues to deepen and widen. your vocabulary, so to speak, your emanation, your expansion, expression is continuing to integrate through the embodiment of your primordial great tone. And your communication and the levels of specificity become more refined as coherence stabilizes, right? Which means that your language naturally becomes simpler, clear, concise, specific, because you've integrated your primordial light. And so we're going to venture in to language as a living geometry, because every thought and every word, I've discussed this before, creates a form and a structure. And every sentence creates relationships, spatial and energetic interfacing and exchange. And every conversation and dialogue, spoken or not, organizes a field and new fabrics, new filaments through sound and light and through vibration. It is a structural architecture because language establishes proportion. It establishes direction, orientation, spatial relation, movement, coherence. And in many ways, and indeed some might say completely, language functions very much like sacred geometry, right? Because geometry organizes space, right? We can hold that. Geometry organizes space, right? Thought creates form. And language through light and through sound organize consciousness, right? So that thought, that word, creates the shape that organizes and creates the form that is translating in movement and organizing space through form. And the cosmic codex is the architecture through which consciousness continually structures reality. And what's happening now? We are becoming higher level technicians, pure tone technicians, translators, integrators, and receivers, co-creators, right? And one of, well, let's say this, some may not agree. One of the greatest invitations in that is expanding to translate subtle experiences, energetic field to field, to translate those subtle experiences into language and or sound, which I do very frequently, translate it into sound. However, not everything needs explaining, right? Or outward articulation or expression can be emanation. However, in addition, all benefits from that clarity and coherence. So what we're also doing in this expanding of language is becoming those translators and integrators between those cosmic octaves, frequencies, planes, between spaces, space, matter, between the fabrics of silence right? So we're silent, emanating. Vibration and sound, that fabric in between silence, vibration, and sound. That fabric in between intuition, knowingness, and articulation, between spirit and matter, between, within, direct knowing, and shared perceptions and understanding. Language becomes and is the bridge through the cosmos into the earthly, into the celestial core of the earth. And communication as a harmonic resonance is basically, very much so, every conversation, whether energetic or worded, articulated, is basically two tuning forks, right? Two tuning forks wielding. And so where coherence exists, resonance and flow naturally occur, right? So what happens in a conversation? It becomes and is a conscious co-weaving and co-creative divine unfolding, right? Our nervous systems naturally organize together. Our hearts naturally synchronize. And our awareness, our conscious awareness, naturally expand. And this is why presence often communicates more profoundly than words themselves. Think on that for a moment. This is why presence communicates more profoundly than words themselves. Think of an example where your presence or someone's presence that has said no words has communicated very profoundly more than words would, did. So the cosmic codex, expanding, reminds us that our primordial pure tone source frequency is always speaking. It's always expressing through the fields, even when we're silent. Sometimes, especially when we're silent. And so, the new language of humanity will not simply be technological, right? The next phase of evolution is beyond, we could say, just technological. It's actually linguistic, right? Actually linguistic. Because every word and every emanation is infused with higher pure tone source levels of pure presence. And so compassion, for example, means something deeper because it's felt. Love becomes experiential. Unity becomes embodied. Creation becomes co-weaving. And truth is emanated and it's lived. And language evolves and expands because consciousness evolves and widens. And implementing your life is emanation, is in its expression. So the question becomes, during this evolution, is can this and how is it experienced and lived, this evolving consciousness? And can your language evolution support your embodiment? Can your words carry the same coherence your heart experiences and emanates? Can your conversations become living co-creations of your primordial pure frequency through right and aligned relationships, through listening, expression, through your speaking emanation, through your silence and stillness, through your permeating presence? So, how do we expand our language to implement all of our light? All of our light. It's big, right? So notice, observe, witness how certain words or energy expressions, when spoken or heard, immediately soften and widen the nervous system within you, and immediately widen into peace and receptivity. Notice that. What words? What energy expressions? Even though nothing has physically changed, right? Only the frequency has shifted and risen, which naturally changes and expands our perception. Language is, therefore, much beyond communication, right? The words, the sound, and the shapes they create become carriers of information, emotion, memory, and intention simultaneously. And of course, our pure tone, expression, and vibration, source essence. And as our consciousness expands, we begin choosing language that reflects coherence, right? So, self-inquiry for a moment. What frequencies and what words, what thoughts do you repeatedly use? And what frequencies do those words generate? Are they organizing your field towards expansion? Things to think about, feel into. So now, talk about primordial seed frequency. Every individual, I've spoken about this many times, carries a unique harmonic cosmic soul signature, right? Before personality, beyond incarnation, beyond identity, exists eternal, unwavering, unchanging, original, organizing intelligence, source, seed frequency, your original source, essence, and expression, which is your natural, pure resonance, right? And so, one aspect of remembrance and awakening is remembering how to And how is your emanation naturally communicated? And it's not by learning, it's not by adapting a vocabulary, but it's by allowing your own inner divine cosmic architecture to reveal and expand itself. Your language begins changing, expanding naturally because your conscious awareness has changed and shifted. You don't speak from memory. You speak from direct soul knowing. Language creates structural architecture, and creation responds to coherent instruction, direction, and precise organization. And so, what happens when your thoughts remain vague is your energy remains diffuse, right? When language becomes coherent and concise, precise, then the energy, your energy, is organizing and orchestrating with precise articulation, precision, direction. It matters. And not because all of creation requires perfect wording, but, however, because clear language creates coherent internal radiating geometry, semantics, patterns, structure, right? Language is architecture. And it gives direction and function and precision to consciousness, right? So implementation begins with organization, right? So clearer the articulation, the more coherent our consciousness is organizing around it, right? Take a sip of water and breathe out for a moment. Happy 4th of July, by the way. To those of you who celebrate that. Moving beyond, let's move beyond that. Moving beyond concept into embodiment. Let's do that. Because there is a difference between understanding love and radiating love, right? There's a difference between understanding unity and becoming and being unified, right? And there's a difference between understanding presence and actually being present, right? It carries directed authority without needing persuasion or permission. Because when someone speaks from embodiment, you feel it, right? You feel all of it. Because their frequency is communicating as much as their words. And this is where the communication shifts, right? Because you're not convincing others. There's no presentation. There's no pitch. What we're essentially doing, and we are that, is transmitting our own coherence through our natural emanation, right? So that means we're expanding our vocabulary, spoken or non, without limiting mystery. What that means is, as the perception expands, right, we expand our awareness, we widen our perception. We widen our perception, it widens our level of specificity and precision, which means naturally a new language will appear because it's a new geometry, right? A new form has taken shape because those so-called pre-existing words are insufficient. So a new geometry emerges, right? Which is happening now. New consciousness is emerging as a different shape, a new form to create new structures because because that's what's required, right? So when we and as we now transition to communicate beyond spoken language. What? Yes, communicate beyond spoken language. That communication occurs continuously, right? The presence in the body communicates continuously. The field communicates naturally. Let's practice that for a moment, right? And to communicate through my body, my fields, continuously. Silence is communicating. Breath is communicating. Our electromagnetic field is communicating. My presence, communicating through into nature and the elements, the essences. The nervous system, right? It's constantly exchanging information with the environment, field to field. Right? Just because I'm not talking doesn't mean we're not communicating through the fields of information. And so, when and as coherence increase, what happens with communication? It becomes, we could say, multidimensional beyond there. It's universal. And so you're beginning to and are sensing information spatially, right? You recognize the intelligence within environments, meaning that other fields of energy information. You become aware that every interaction with any field of information is energetic, right? Before or instead of being verbal. Words become known and realized as only one layer of communication, right? Speaking from coherence, authentic communication arises when and as our thoughts, our emotions, our nervous system, our body, breathe out, our intentions, and our actions become aligned. This is coherence. All of that. Because people are not transformed simply by information, right? No. They're transformed by and through resonance, right? The most powerful communicators are what? They carry congruence because their words match their frequency. Hollow words do nothing. They feel like nothing. So when these become aligned and unified, communication becomes a living, breathing, exchanging, beating, living transmission, right? The language is the bridge. So we can begin in reflection also, wondering, asking ourselves, how do we speak to ourselves? How do we describe our purpose? How do we introduce our work or something that brings us joy? What we do for fun, our pets, or ourselves? How do we communicate with our family? How do we describe the earth? How do we describe humanity? Right? Lots of questions. And every inquiry, every conversation is an opportunity to anchor, to integrate, and to exchange coherence. Right? Light is lived, expressed through language. Not because language carries and creates the light, but because language allows consciousness to reorganize around it. Language allows consciousness to organize around it, right? And when language and embodiment become unified, our actions naturally reflect our deepest knowing. And as we expand our awareness, our language naturally becomes more spacious, more intentional, more coherent, and more alive. I couldn't help myself. We begin speaking from presence, right? From direct knowledge. And in doing so, we have fun. Better be having fun. In doing so, our words cease being simple descriptions. They become living frequencies that implement the light we have come here to embody, which is the brilliance of ourself in full luminosity, right? Oh, how glorious is that? Oh, it just feels nice thinking about. And so, I had to take a moment with that one. Consciousness expands through what? Through new language, through pure tone frequency, emanation. Consciousness expands through new language and through pure tone frequency emanation. No. It's exciting. And so, a living, let's do looking at the time, so-called time. Language and time. A closing, let's do a closing reflection. That's living and beating, expressing, beating. Through the evolution of language. As we know, cosmic codex is so many codexes. It's never been hidden. No codex is hidden. And perhaps it's been quietly unfolding, right? Through every leaf, through every river, through every constellation and heartbeat, and through every breath. It's been unfolding, right? The cosmic codex through the breath. Maybe not what you look like or feel like or thought it would look like or sound like, be like. However, every soul enters this world already with vast libraries of unwritten chapters that can only reveal through the libraries of DNA and the cosmic architecture, pure tone expression. And that is and could be in a multitude of ways. Through language, emanation, mudra, light, geometry, expression, telepathy, field-to-field communication. And so, as our awareness expands, so too does our capacity to perceive this living, breathing, expanding language in a multitude of modalities, ways, expressions. And it's not something external to master. However, it's an internal, inner, pure source essence to remember, waiting to be fully expressed and embodied. And when we speak, as we speak from coherence, we do way more than exchange information. We participate and co-create architecture of new creation, of conscious collaboration. Our words become and our vessels for presence. And our silence becomes luminous. Our actions become living sentences within an ever-evolving conversation between consciousness and unfolding co-creation, a new world. And so, the invitation is to remember what has always lived within you, your pure source expression, your primordial source frequency language. To allow your thoughts, your voice, your relationships, and your creations to become expressions of new chapters in your own living life, unfolding moment by moment through your cosmic architecture and your pure tone soul song. And so, as we summarize, it's going to take a moment to emanate. Emanate gratitude with you, for you, alongside you, as we continue to co-create in the architecture of a new unfolding creation. I hope you've enjoyed receiving, exchanging, weaving, emanating, co-creating, expanding with the evolving language. If you have, feel free to leave a comment in the video. Share how you experienced it, whether you experienced it live or through the replay, or someone shared it with you. Wishing you so much alignment and love. I will see you soon.